Sounds good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, February 11th, City Council Press Conference. Today, you're very lucky to have myself, Councilor Thomason, and Councilor Basie. It's pretty cold out there, so we appreciate all of you that have showed up here today. One of the topics that we're going to discuss is the Delbridge Museum, and we have a vote on that tonight. And my colleague is going to kind of go into a little bit more in depth and something that she would like to talk about in regards to that. However, I just wanted to kind of start off by saying I was put on the working group shortly after I was elected, and just proud of the work that the work group was able to do. Even though I was only there for a couple meetings, you could tell that there was a lot of thought put into who the working group was, who they were reaching out to with some different things. The communication that they had with me as a new counselor was fantastic. And so I appreciate all that they did, all that the zoo staff has done to kind of help get me, at that time up to speed, all that the administration has done as well. So it's been a long road for everybody. And there's maybe, a conclusion coming to it tonight, depending on how the vote goes. But I do want to bring up Councilor Basie as she wants to talk a little bit more about something in regards to the Delbridge for tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Thomason. And I'll just, before I jump into this, I just want to echo, or maybe just extend my gratitude towards the folks in the working group, Councilor Thomason, Councilor McCorris, that was all part of that, and previous Councilor Jensen, that really kind of paved the way for some conversations. There's a lot of information to sift through on this one. And I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody. I think as I say that, you're probably like, yep, we know. And so there's been a lot of information I know that Councilor Thomason has been pouring over through the work group, but then also myself and my other colleagues as we prepare for tonight's vote. And so there is an amendment that I will be bringing tonight to the resolution that I want to share with you guys a little bit about. Before I jump into that, for me personally, I'm a fourth generation Sioux Falls resident, and so I have some pretty vivid memories of this collection. My sisters and I would go there on cold days like today, exactly like today, and run back and forth and push the different buttons to hear the sounds of two animals at once. See the way that they had different kind of like egg sizes, and there's just so much that I took out of that in my heart and soul, and had the opportunity to dialogue with my dad and my grandpa, and actually learn some family history through that process too. So that collection is really near and dear to my heart. And so this vote tonight and the time leading up to it has been really challenging. For me, as an individual, I keep asking myself, is it really the animals in the collection and the mounts that mean so much? Or is it the story behind them? Is it, the memories that I just shared? Is it the education component? And so as we look to potentially move those on to another institution that would care for them, that would, bring a whole new light to them educationally, I kept asking myself, how is there a way that we can have that connection to the heart and the soul and the legacy of this gift to our city, the individuals and the families that made this gift possible to our city in the first place, and that generated these memories. Much of like what I'm sharing, and I know many folks have been emailing and calling over the last few weeks to share so many of these memories. So tonight I will be bringing forth an amendment to the resolution that would create a Delbridge Wildlife Legacy exhibit, a tribute to conservation and community. So I'll be asking my fellow councilors to support an investment at the zoo in an interactive exhibit that would honor the legacy of the Brockhouse and Delbridge families and their contributions, not just to our city, but the evolution of wildlife conservation. really our ask or our goal with this would be that the exhibit would align with the zoo's mission and vision to educate and inspire and create a deeper appreciation for wildlife and conservation. Maybe have an opportunity to blend some of that historical storytelling of this collection and how it came to be in our community, and maybe some opportunity for overlap or interconnectedness, interactivity with maybe other animals that we have at the zoo that are live animals that would maybe be in a similar habitat as some of these mounts. So we'll have some discussion about that at the vote tonight. But really, my hope, my vision with this ask, with this amendment, should I have the support of my colleagues, would be that we acknowledge that this gift to our city was profound and it was significant. And when we accept gifts and when we say that we're going to take care of something and that we're going to have something out in the community for folks, that we continue that and that we honor that legacy. So with that, I will look at Councilor Thomason if he has anything else to add. Otherwise, I think both of us are here for any questions or commentary as we look forward to our preparation on our meeting and our vote tonight.
Are you in favor of the animals going somewhere else?
I think that we've had the opportunity as a community and as a city to care for these, to demonstrate that we want them here. And I don't think that throughout this process that it's come out that we, as a community at large, have the, I don't think that we're the right place to honor the future of this collection and the care that it needs. And so for what I believe is right for that collection to live its longest life possible, right now with the information in front of me, I think that they need to go elsewhere.
And would you be willing to offer your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, so the question was, am I in favor of them going to the three different institutions? Yeah, it comes down to the care of the animals and the care for the animals. When it was donated years and years ago, and it was at West Zoo and then moved to the zoo, you kind of saw more of a vibrancy with the animals. A lot more people attended the exhibit. And, at the end of the day, when you look at who is going to be able to take the best care of the collection financially, what also aligns with it with other things, like at the University of Notre Dame, at the Oddities Museum, at the Institute in New Jersey, where it's going to be used to show other taxidermists, like, hey, this is what you can do really well, and this is maybe what doesn't work out. And so that was a long answer to saying I will be in support tonight of sending them off, just due to I want the animals cared for.
How do you explain, I don't want to say justify, but explain the fact that at one point there was a vote, right? The community, albeit 40 whatever years ago, voted to spend taxpayer money to build the place, and that's going away. What obligation do you have, and how do you overcome that in this agreement in terms of we promised the taxpayers and they don't get to decide? I mean, you're their chosen representative, but they aren't going to get to decide what happens, and they voted to put these in that building.
So the question is, how do we justify as a working group or myself individually on all those years ago, it's voted on to have an exhibit at the zoo, and now we're voting to potentially have them go elsewhere? Is that what the question is? Well, it's been a very interesting learning experience on when you talk about different things within the Dell Bridge of what does the word perpetuity mean. We went to the state and got that changed at the legislature last year. That was the spot that I'm sitting in. That was former Councilor Alex Jensen that went out and got that helped to be able to get it sent out. And also to Councilor Basie's point, we've been talking about this since September of '23 of, hey, there's some things that we have to do to the exhibit. There's some things that we need to do here. There's some things that we need to do there. And just overall, the overwhelming kind of thing has been, is it time for us to move on? And so while I understand that there was a lot of history and that there is a lot of history with the collection, and that 40, 50 years ago it was voted to go to the zoo from West Sioux, it's just one of those things where the time has come for it to move on. I don't know if you want to touch on that or not.
I would first start with just acknowledging that this is a challenging vote, and I wish it wasn't on our desk. I wish that we were in a different situation, and the lead up of events to a decision like this were different. I think about the growth and the evolution of the zoo's vibrancies, the future of the zoo, and the leadership of the zoo over time. And we as a city, my understanding is we've got a contract with them, right? So they're a management company. So we're empowering and encouraging them to make those kinds of decisions on the facility and the kinds of animals that they have. And so I lean a lot on the folks in the working group for some of those details. But my understanding with the information in front of me, that's a lot of how I view this. Is that looking at, what place does this collection have in the continued evolution of a successful and vibrant zoo, and is there a place for it? What would that place be like? So maybe that's just extra context to your question. I don't know if it directly answers it, but that's just really openly and vulnerably what goes through my brain as you ask that.
You have to acknowledge that you're basically reversing that decision at some measure. It's a philosophical question, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing. There's no way around that. Mm-hmm. Is it also the fact that to save it, it isn't worth the money that it would take to save it? Keep it here, I mean.
I think ultimately, Councilor Thomason hit on this, and he's more abreast of the details of the specific locations that are proposed for these specimens to go to. But I look at the University of Notre Dame and their mission and their purpose and why they would want a collection like this on display. And that, to me, fits better. That this collection would be cared for immensely, and it would have the continued lifespan as opposed to being where it is or where it has been next to the zoo. I think that, that's the philosophical side of it, I think, is what is the purpose of the institution where this collection is potentially being housed.
But to house it somewhere else in the city would cost too much money than it's worth.
I think that we've had, this specific situation has gotten a lot of publicity, probably more than many decisions, many votes that come across our desk. And so, when we think about what things would cost, there hasn't been, the vocalized investment or donor base to potentially support with an investment like that, not just upfront in an appropriate facility, but then in the ongoing care.
Is it fair to say that that it's not a large number of people who have expressed deep reservations about the plan and that would help organize and or finance an alternative? There aren't enough people that want to do that to make it possible.
I don't think in the way that we've seen donations or, other philanthropy come forward in other projects. I would say that most people that I talk to outside of, the emails and the phone calls and stuff that I get when I'm out asking folks and seeking commentary, a lot of what I'm hearing is, gosh, it's a shame. It's a shame that they would be thrown away. And so I think that there is some information, some maybe lack of awareness of some of the work or the information that that's a result of the working group. So typically when I share what the proposal in front of me as a counselor for vote is, there's been a number of folks that are like, oh, I didn't realize that.
There's probably more to it too than just the financial component, right? It's where does it go? And so you can look where they have the master plan on the zoo, and it's a fair walk. I mean, you walk into the building and you've got to walk past a couple of exhibits. So on a day like today, how many people are going to be super interested in doing that? Well, then you can maybe look at the outdoor campus. Well, it's the outdoor campus. That's kind of a cool synergy. You can go snowshoeing. It's wildlife. Well, can you even build a building big enough to be able to house everything? When you look at traditional museums nowadays, it's kind of a U shape, right? So that you walk in one door and then you walk around and then walk out the other. And so the design of that also has to be carefully taken care of. The restoration of the animals has to be looked at. The HVAC system within the building is not just a normal, throwing an air conditioner down and turning it on. It's got to be very well preserved. So there's just a lot more into it than just maybe necessarily looking at keeping the collection here. It's the extended costs on top of that. And it's an unfortunate situation where it's, both sides have really good points on some that really want to see the collection go elsewhere and others that want to see the collection stay here. For every argument you can have on the one hand, you can have an argument on the other. And so it's our job to figure out what is the most pragmatic, middle of the road approach. And this is kind of what we've come up with.
If the council does decide to move these animals out of state, will there be a final viewing opportunity for the public, or would anything like that be planned in Sioux Falls?
As of right now, no.
And Councilor Basie, I know you touched on it, but what exactly would, your amendment creating something to honor the legacy of these animals, what exactly would that look like?
An interactive exhibit on the zoo campus.
Would that be where the museum is now?
That's something that we'd like to collaborate with, the zoo leadership team and their master planning process. We, in kind of having this conversation and dreaming up this idea, this is something that we want people to want to go to. I actually mentally draw from the Kirby Science Center and some of those kind of interactive opportunities that they have as a source of inspiration. So where that fits into their master plan, open to conversations, but something that will be in the zoo's infrastructure, and it will be something that children, that people can do and be excited about when they go to the zoo.
And I totaled up the animals. It's 152. Is that all the animals, or are there any left over?
I would have to look to Councilor Thomason.
Okay.
The panda would stay.
Yeah, the panda would stay, but the rest of the collection is all spoken for with all the three groups that have. Yes. Yeah, so the request for qualification, the RFQ that we sent out was a nationwide ordeal. I mean, it got sent out everywhere. And we had several groups reach back out. Some of the ones that did the request for qualification that didn't get selected. One was Yale University. They only wanted like 4 of the specimens. So as we kind of looked at it, it's like, okay, how can we keep the collection as intact as best as possible? And some of the animals, based off of the report, are like way past its useful life. And so the University of Notre Dame basically looked at the report and said, okay, what are the ones that have the least amount of work that has to be done? Maybe it's more rare than other animals, and they got all those. The Oddities Museum down in, I believe it's Atlanta, they did not to them, it did not matter the condition. They'll go in and restore it, do whatever. They have a vast collection of a lot of different things. And then the gentleman that came in and actually did all of the looking at the animals and giving us the report, he's the one that's taking the 2 other ones. And, another thing to touch on with all of these groups is that they are expanding collections. This is not them getting a collection and just starting a museum from scratch. This is something that is actually adding to a collection that they already have. And that is something that's important to me as well, because you have the longevity there of that they, already have an endowment, they already have operating expenses, they already have staff to go in and routinely care for these animals. And so that was a big thing for all these groups that reached out, and they had to show financial wherewithal, space wherewithal, support wherewithal. We wanted to make sure that just not a random person from the University of Notre Dame saw this and said, oh, hey, that would be really cool. I'm just going to send an email and see if we can get it. I mean, we got a letter from the dean, saying, hey, this is something we would like.
Ready to change topics?
Anything for you. Anything for you.
It looks like the legislature is not in a mood to allow municipalities to add a penny sales or an entertainment tax to fund individual projects. And while that was pitched as something for small towns out in the legislature, we all know that it was for Riverline. With that option off the table, what are the chances for Riverline to move forward as a convention center plan? What are your thoughts on our ability to finance a project of that magnitude without that penny?
Yeah, so when you look at any of these projects, Patrick, you can't just look at it from one, it's not a one-way road. You have to have multiple lanes, and okay, this is a path we can go down to do this. This is another path, so on and so forth. So I do think it could have helped different communities. I sit on the municipal league board, and I actually did talk to some folks from some different towns, and they weren't totally against it. But ultimately it was voted down. And so when you talk about the longevity of that project, there's probably 4 or 5 different things that everybody's looking at. Neither of us sit on that task force, so we do get updates periodically. But I would say that I'm sure there's another tool in their tool bag to take a look at. Okay, this didn't work, so what's the next step to see if we can make it work?
What other revenue sources might be out there that could help back this project up?
The first you can look at is private donations. I mean, that's not going to nearly take care of it all, but the first is how many people are willing to privately donate. The other is, we had a vote this summer on the Elmwood Golf Course. If you remember, the clubhouse needed some additional funding, and there was a project that we were looking at doing. That project ended up not going through, so we did have some additional funding that we could pull from other projects. So those are 2 right off the top of my head. If there's more, there could be, but those are just 2 off the top of my head that I can think of in terms of looking at it from a holistic view.
And just from the big picture too, that failed this time, the mayor has said he'd like to come back and take another bite of the apple because it's a great idea. You served in the legislature. Assess generally the likelihood that the South Dakota legislature is going to grant any local government, whether that's county or municipalities, access to additional sales tax revenue.
All depends on which way the wind is going that day. I mean, you look at the legislature when I was out there, it's much different today than it was when I was out there, and then even in between. I would say that it depends on how other communities look at it, other representatives, other senators. It's also about timing. If there's other municipalities that are looking at doing different projects, maybe there might be a group of people that say, okay, let's really help to push this through. But the point simply is it probably wouldn't pass again if it got brought up, but you never know out in Pierre what can happen or may not happen. Do you have another question? Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jack. Any questions in the back? Okay.
right, that concludes the press conference of the City Council on February 11th at 11:54 and 42 seconds.